Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Sorry, I logged on just a second ago to go live. I haven't figured out screen sharing quite yet, but we're getting there. So it's good to see everyone this afternoon. I'm going to pull this up on another computer as well because I'm going to be using my computer in kind of some different ways today. We're going to do some interesting activities. If you checked out the preview, we are going to be making a map today, our very own fantasy map. We took our first few steps into a fantasy world yesterday, and now we're going to take the first few steps into our own fantasy world. So I'm going to wait to get started until we've got at least a couple people in here. I'm going to be opening the chat here. So please hop in, greet me in the chat, say hello. If you want to share your name, please share your name so that way I can address you throughout. I'd love to talk to you guys and actually get to hang out with you. That's one thing really missing right now is getting to interact and hang out with each other, right? So today into the Dungeonverse, we're going to be doing some like I said, map making. We are going to do some more character creation. We started a little bit yesterday, sketching out some characters, just some ideas that came to us. But we're actually going to get a little bit further into how do we play a role-playing game? How do we actually make this activity work in a way that's fun and engaging for us. So to do that, we're going to make our own character classes. And I've created a slideshow, which was why I was trying to screen share earlier. And then the screen share didn't work. So that's why I went live for just a second. Hi to our first viewer coming in. It could possibly be me watching on another laptop. But it is good to see you. Welcome this afternoon. Please say hi in the chat. Let us know how you're doing, what you want us to call you. You can share your name or you can share a made-up name if you would like. Good afternoon. So, we talked yesterday about what roleplay is, that it is the idea of going into a character's perspective, into their mindset, and trying to think about the way they feel, the fears they have, the motivations, the goals, the dreams. And that builds empathy for us, and it's also just a fun activity. It allows us to experience things that are different from our own life. Like, I don't very often get to go out and fight dragons. Occasionally I have a good weekend, but most of the time I'm at home or I'm working, right? So it allows us to experience things that are totally different and exciting and new. And it also allows us to experience things that are in our real world, but that we might not, like starting a business. I've started multiple businesses in Dungeons and Dragons, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing that. And Dungeons and Dragons is just one game that you can play. It's the one that I was introduced to, and it's the one that I played the most when I was younger. But you can do this. You can even make up your own game entirely. So, welcome. Thanks to someone just checking in. Good to see you. You're going to hear me holler right now, just a second. I'm going to ask for some assistance from my set director. Miss Kaylee?
Yeah.
If you were able to locate my dice chest for me. I did forget to grab that before we got started.
I will go get it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, there are different ways that you can experience roleplay, and different ways that you can do this. A lot of times we use a game, like Dungeons and Dragons, or like the Star Wars RPG from Fantasy Flight Games. These give us a lot of lore to access, which is like rules and classes and stories and all of these different things that enrich our play. But there's something else that they provide, which is something that generally we don't like, is rules. But these rules are actually very good for us because they make the play that we have, the game that we have value, and it resonates on a on a deeper level because you actually have a chance of failure. And when you have a chance of failure, it becomes a lot more engaging. So, man, I really want to get started looking into our classes, but we don't have anyone in here yet. So I want to hold off until we got at least a couple people in here, so that way we can engage and we can talk about this. If I get started too late, then or if I get started too early, then some people might be coming in. They might be just checking on the end. So right now I see I've got one viewer. If you hop in the chat, let me know you're here. I will go ahead. I'll take away my beautiful fireplace here in a second. Hello, Janet. Welcome. Thank you for joining today. We are just about to hop into our first activity. We're waiting until we get a couple people in here so that way we don't miss out. All right. So you should be able to see behind me. No, you can't. I still have my fireplace up. Bear with me as I learn to navigate this live space. We're all learning to adapt and change into this totally new environment, as a lot of us are staying at home and trying to do things digitally. And sometimes we are still in the process of learning. Miss Kaylee, yeah, thank you. You can just put those down right there for me. I appreciate it. All right. I'm going to hop up for just a second. I need to open my blinds so you all can see me a little better. All right, that is so much better. My goodness, I was wondering what was wrong with my picture. I was like, why can't anyone see me? Or why can't I see myself very well? It's because I had the blinds still closed from this morning. So we're going to take a real quick look at D&D classes, because if you join us on one of our Saturday sessions, or if you decide to join us once we are up and running again. Hi, Jacob. I just see this in. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well this afternoon. Are you excited to pick out a D&D class today? A class, if you don't know what it is basically an archetype or an example of what kind of hero you are. And we're going to go through those today, and we're going to actually check out which ones we would want to be. So that way, if we do join in a game, we already have a kind of an understanding of what we want to play. And so if you've ever seen a fantasy story or even Star Wars, which is kind of like fantasy in space, every character has a unique role that they play. They have a unique skill set. Some are very good with swords. Some are great at magic. Others are really great at sneaking. Others just don't seem to be hurt by the enemy. We have all of these different types of heroes, and each are fun to watch. I mean, even if you look at the Marvel superheroes, they all have different characteristics and skills and abilities. Captain America might be very great at defending people, but he's not as good at smashing things as the Hulk. Just like a paladin in D&D might be very good at defending and protecting his allies, and they are pretty good at beating up the bad guys too. But the barbarian is much better at that because they're like the Hulk. They really like smashing things. So we're going to hop right into the classes and see what one you would want to be if you joined us. So feel free to comment. Let me know what you're thinking, and I'm going to give you a little description of each one. And I just lost most of my supplies. So the first one I have is the barbarian. I was just talking about them. The Hulk, Stoic, or Gobber from How to Train Your Dragon, or just a classic barbarian. These are men and women who use their raw strength, their power, and their physical prowess to just overpower the enemies. They're often good at using things in the wild, and they use all sorts of large weapons, and they don't even have to wear armor. That's something that's really cool and unique about barbarians, and allows them to move quickly and allows them to navigate the field. In older editions of Dungeons & Dragons, they used to be illiterate, meaning they couldn't read at all, which was an interesting challenge to play as a character. I once played a barbarian that spoke a total of 13 words, and it was one of the most fun characters I've ever played, because I had to be very creative with the way that I navigated social setting because I only had 13 words to use. So it was pretty interesting. All right, so nope, wrong way. Next up is the bard. Bards are spellcasters, but they use magic only, or they use music to cast their magic. They use music to use their power. So we have Rapunzel from Tangled. She sings to activate her magic. We've got characters from Coco and from Book of Life, and then some just examples of bards here in the background. They are charismatic people. They know a lot. My wife said that even Phineas and Ferb could be considered bards. I haven't watched Phineas and Ferb, so I don't know. But apparently they sing songs and they know a lot of different things, and they're very charismatic. All characteristics of a bard. They are people who know things and know how to do things. We also have clerics. They serve a higher power, and they get their powers, their magical abilities like healing and repelling evil creatures from that bond, from that devotion that they make. So Jacob, which one are you thinking so far? Do any of these sound like something that's interesting to you? All right, next is the Druid. Druids are stewards of nature. They are like Radagast the Brown from The Hobbit, or any character that values the natural world over maybe civilization. They can turn into animals, they can cast nature spells, they can even influence the weather, which is really powerful and a cool power to use in the game because that can really change your situation and setting entirely. So druids are a very fun one. Really enjoy them. Fighters are your classic like knight. They are skilled at using weapons. They are skilled at fighting. They are, as their name implies, right? They are skilled at fighting. They can use all sorts of weapons. They're very physically fit. So if you just want to be someone who is like good at using those weapons, good at engaging in melee, which is hand-to-hand combat, or sword-to-sword, depending on the context, this would be the one that you want to go with. Then we have monks like Aang from the Avatar: The Last Airbender, one of my favorite shows. Fantastic. Jacob is he is thinking right now. Keep thinking, Jacob. There's a few more. Ninja Turtles could even be considered monks as well, because monks are people who, they like the fighter, they train in martial combat, but they also train in developing their internal self. So any martial artist that you know, anyone who practices and trains a martial craft, but they do it intellectually, that it would be a monk in some ways. Monks also have the ability to like summon their internal power, their internal energy, and use it to like create fire, kind of like the benders in the Avatar: The Last Airbender world. Which, if you haven't watched that before, check it out. It's a very good one. It's kid friendly. I remember watching it when I was young. Very enjoyable. Then we have, do we skip one? Next we have the Paladin. The Paladins are like Knights Templar. They're holy crusaders. They're like fighters mixed with clerics. They're very good at hand-to-hand combat, but they also have these holy powers that are given to them by their deity, by the person that they've devoted to. And that gives them ways to like smite their enemies. That's actually their main power, is they can take down their enemies a little bit faster because they are a righteous wrath. Paladins are very strong, but they also have a strict moral code. So paladins will not allow any sort of negative behavior to occur in their presence. They're very strict like that. Then we have a ranger. Ranger is someone who's good at using ranged weapons. Obviously, that kind of is implied in the name, but they are specifically good at ranging the wilds. They can navigate the wilderness, and they can do all, they can track animals, all sorts of really cool things related to the wild and to the natural world. Kind of like druids, but they are a little bit more practical and do have a place in society, often as hunters or as guides. We have the rogue like Flynn Rider from Tangled, or Captain Jack Sparrow or even Bilbo from The Hobbit. Rogues are, they were called burglars in older editions. They're sneaky, sneaky characters. They are good at blending into the shadows, getting the drops on the enemies, maybe taking a valuable item from the bad guy when he's not looking. They are cunning characters, and they are often good at speaking as well, but they prefer to stick to the shadows. And then next we have sorcerers. Like, Kaylee put Thor in there. I'm not sure if I agree with Thor. We'll unpack that and we'll see. The sorcerers, they have a natural magical power. It just comes to them. Like Elsa was born with this magical power that she had, and that was that affected her. So Elsa is a sorceress because she gets her powers innately, and she has kind of some trouble controlling them. So she's actually a wild mage sorcerer or sorceress. So if you want to play a character that has some kind of like random elements to it, you could be a wild mage who sometimes has there's a table we roll on, and random effects can happen. Very fun. So Thor being a sorcerer, I don't know, because Thor gets his power from his belief in himself. It's odd because he's kind of like a cleric, but for himself. So I would argue that Thor is more of a cleric, Miss Kaylee. But I appreciate you putting him on there because I do like Thor. Then we have our warlocks. They make deals with more powerful beings and creatures, so that way they can gain powers beyond themselves. They're like spellcasters, like wizards and sorcerers, but they have a little more variety in what they can do. Some can summon spiritual weapons to use, and they can use those to great effect. Some control little minions called familiars, which can cast spells for them, carry out tasks. Very, very fun one if you're looking to have some variety in what you can do. And the last one, Jacob, so now's where you're going to have to start figuring out, is our wizard. These are people who study to gain their magical powers. They're not like sorcerers or sorceresses or warlocks. They read books. They study the science of magic. They study how that works, and then they gain these powers and the ability to use these spells through that understanding. So all sorts of different characters here. Each one has a different type. I'm going to put up a slide here in a minute that will have a list of all of them. So if you're interested in telling me what your class is, then please, feel free to hop in the chat. Jacob, I'm interested to see what you see what you choose. We are going to be making a craft next, so I'd like you to start gathering your materials. You're going to need a pencil, and you are going to need some paper. You're going to need some random odds and ends. So I did put some suggestions up, but we can use anything that can be scattered about, like paper clips or Legos. If you have them, will work very well. If you don't have any of those, little bits of paper, just taking a piece of paper, ripping it, crumpling it up, making tiny little balls. We're going to use these to cast a map for us, to cast the basis of a continent. So go ahead and gather those materials for us. Remember, we need pencil, we need paper, we need some things to cast about, like Legos or beans or rice. If your parents don't want you to use food around the house, beans you should be good to clean. Rice you could clean as well. You're just going to put it on a paper, and that's it. So we'll give you 2 minutes, 3 minutes. We'll give you 3 minutes to gather those materials, and we'll start our map making. I'm going to tilt my screen down, and we're going to actually make a map together. This will be a fantasy world that we revisit not just to this week, but throughout the time that we are here. We're going to develop it more. We're going to add characters, and we're going to continue to build, because part of roleplay is having a world to play in, having a world to interact with, a world to help grow and to change. So 3 minutes to gather those materials. If you're here in the chat, let me know that you have those, and we'll get started when you are ready. And I'm going to gather some of my materials that fell on the ground earlier. And I am still working on getting that last slide for us. All right, so gather those materials. I will be right back after I gather my own materials that fell. I'm actually actually right here, so keep talking. You can see that there are some maps on my wall behind me, or behind where I sit normally. Maps are a really cool thing that add to the fantasy world and to the fantasy setting. When you have a map, it helps you know, one, where you are in the world, but it helps you understand what the context of this world is. When you see on the map of Middle Earth how close Gondor, one of the main places of the good people, is to Mordor, the seat of evil, you understand that it's very scary for them because they live very, very close to the evil people. All right, I'm returning. I hope you have had a chance to gather some materials. And I will put up that last slide for us so you can take a look. It doesn't seem to be working for me, but that's okay, because we're going to move on to our map making activity. Jacob, let me know if you decided what class you were going to do. Sorry for not talking there for a second. I was trying to figure out a technical in. So, I want to make sure my chat is up on my other screen before we get started, because I want to be able to talk to you. Once I have the screen tilted down, I won't be able to see the chat anymore on the camera that I'm recording from. So, give me just a moment and bear with me there. Take this as an extra opportunity to make sure you have as many things that you can spread about as possible. There are two different ways that you can make a map. You can create a map just out of your mind and just say, I want an island here, I want there to be some more land here. You can absolutely do that. I like to throw in a little bit of a random element because it makes it a little more fun, and it makes it just kind of more interesting to me, and it takes a little bit of the creation out of my head and makes it something that I have to react to. So I'm going to go ahead and tilt my camera down, and you guys are going to take a look at my paper here. Right now it is blank, but we're going to fill this up, and we're going to add some cool stuff to it. So I'm going to take my things that I have to scatter about, and I might throw some dice in there as we go. I'm going to take these things, I'm going to gather them over here off to the side. My goal is to toss these down on my paper in a sort of random way. I don't want to try to make shapes yet. I really just want to... Well, it fell on the floor, so we got a little bit of dog hair in there. So we want to just kind of toss it down in random ways. We don't want to create the shapes yet. We want to let those shapes come to us once we have the whole mass down. So I'm just trying to toss them randomly, but scattering them about. If they move each other, that's totally okay, because that's just part of the reaction. And if you're using something like Legos, you can ascribe some meaning to those Lego colors if you want. Maybe hot colors are hot temperature lands. Maybe the cooler colors are where the climate is a little more mild. Maybe green is kind of tropical. That might not make a lot of sense, so you might have to play around with it. But again, it is a fantasy world, so you can definitely play with that. You can have a tropical environment next to a tundra. Perhaps that's some magic gone wrong. All right, now the Legos are taking up a bit of space, so I'm going to take some of the Legos out because I feel like they're a little blocky. Well, they are blocky. That is the point of them. Hey, Ben, good to see you. Glad you're checking in. So I'm going to use some more of my paper clips. I'm going to toss them in. I'm going to use some more of my paper balls. Throw them in as well. Just create some different textures, and then once you have your own scattered about, You're going to use your pencil. I'm going to be using a Sharpie because it's really hard to see the pencil. So I want you to be able to see what I'm doing, but I personally, if I was doing this myself, would use pencil. And then I'll toss one more down. Make sure that chain gets used. Okay. Alright, I'm going to check and make sure you can see my whole map. Perfect. Alright, without further ado, we are going to begin creating our map. So right now there's just a bunch of scattered pieces, and in a few minutes we are going to have a map that we can begin filling in and adding to. So I'm going to start up here with this corner. Slide it over so that way you can see. So these that are separated, they might be connected, these two right here, because they're super close, but they're going to be an island. And this island, that's an interesting formation. It almost looks like a T-Rex skull or something. I'm going to make the edges kind of rough, like the coast. And then once I encircle those, I'm going to remove them from my map. And you can now start to see the start of my my fantasy world here. So here's another island here. Sometimes the pieces are going to move. That's okay. This does not need to be perfect. This might just be a first draft for you. Alright, so that's an interesting formation. We got another island here. I think this one is totally separated. That'll be an interesting shape for an island. I wonder if there is any precedent for that type of island. Just that very, very tubular. Alright, so we got some more. We're going to get to the main landmass. I like to do the islands on the outside first. I don't know why. That's just a personal preference for me. You could do it either way. You could hop in, start at the landmass. I like this chain because it creates this kind of neat element here, and I think it's actually going to connect to the main landmass here in a way. We got this sort of archipelago off to the side here. And so as you're making your map, you might start to think, well, the archipelago, they're kind of disconnected from the mainland. Oh, sorry, I'll move my hand. Does everything work the same there? Do they get treated differently because they're on the outside? Do they maybe have a better life because they're not connected to the mainland where there's some issues? Who knows? Because if it's a fantasy world, there's got to be some sort of issue or overarching crisis, right? It can't just be a super peaceful realm, or if it is, it's not going to be past the prologue. So now I am getting into the main continent, but you can see there are some gaps in my supplies here in the center, so I'd actually use those as like a lake. Those indicate that there is some water here. So that way we don't just have a straight solid landmass, and we'll put some rivers in to connect those maybe. So it seems like generally this place is going to be pretty watery. So that tells me that perhaps the culture is going to be related to seafaring. Using a boat is probably going to be something that's very important to people in this world. If there's so many rivers and lakes and so many islands that are important to their culture, they're going to be able to travel. They're going to want to be able to travel. So as you're making your map, I'm curious, you can't share it now while we're live, but please share afterwards on this post what your map looks like, because each of us should be making a pretty different map based off of the way we cast things down and the way we're interpreting them. So now I'm all the way back here in the back of the map. You might have trouble seeing beyond the Legos. I will move things off. That's my favorite part, is doing all of this and then taking the Legos off, and then you just see this whole thing that didn't exist before. And like, yeah, I could have sat down and I could have just, made some random shapes and decided all of these things. But this is so much more fun to me. So that's the way I want to do it. I hope that you all are enjoying it as well. If you're not doing it yourself, I hope you're enjoying watching me kind of shakily add these landmarks and lines. I'm going to move that Lego because it's kind of hard to work around. So I decided not to do anything with the Lego color because I'm actually going to use dice to determine where things are in my world. But we might do that later on. All right, we're almost done. I have a couple more lakes to draw and one island. And then you all are going to get to see our fantasy world. Hello, Shay. Good to see you. Thank you for checking in. I don't know if my chat's not loading or if no one is responding to my chat. But if you're there, please reach out. I'm happy to hear from you. I'm quite lonely here in my room. I'm totally teasing. I'm not lonely at all. I've been spending some lovely time with my family, with my young son. We have made a blanket fort for him. He calls it Malcolm Castle, and he really enjoys it. It's also our attempt to get him to sleep in his own bed. All right, so I believe that's everything sketched. So now I will do the big reveal, but if you have an idea for the name of this continent or this fantasy world, please comment and we will have this be a community named. Hello, I have a greeting from someone in there. All right, let's slide this off and see what our fantasy world is. All right, and we now have a fantasy map. The start of one. We have to fill it in, of course. There's much more for us to do. But we've got these lakes in the center. So the land is kind of separated by these lakes. I'm curious if maybe some trade has opened up here. Did they build on the lakes? Are these islands important at all? Our map does need some other things, though, to be complete. We need a compass rose, so let's put that on there. I'm going to put that right up here. I'm going to use my ruler as my guide. I'm going to use my fine point for this one. This might not be the neatest. I'm using an interesting table right now, so I can't put a lot of pressure on it. Alright, it's not perfectly even, but we are not perfectionists here. We just want to create. Okay, now that one is pretty off. I'm going to fix that one. And so your compass rose is just your compass to let us know which way is north, which way is south. There's mine up here. Can I write upside down? Let's find out. Is that an N? It is. Oh, I'm good at this. There's an S. Is that an S? It is. Alright, so there's our compass rose up at the top. But there is definitely still some detail missing, right? We don't know where anybody lives. We don't know what the environment is like. And again, of course, we can make it up, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I want to give you some tools. If you're new to creating a fantasy world, it can be kind of challenging to create just from nothing, especially without a lot of experience. So if you have any dice laying around, you can just use regular D6s is what we call them in the Dungeons and Dragons or role-playing world. Just regular old six-sided die. If you have Yahtzee or any sort of board game at home, you can go grab those. And I'll give you a couple minutes to do that. We're going to use that as a table. Or we're going to use that to create a table of maybe what is in the world. I'm going to do a kind of simplified version of it for the example. But you all are welcome to create something unique to your world. When I say create a table, what I mean is creating something to generate some information. So for example, we're going to use a D6, which has 6 sides, so 6 numbers, so 6 results. One, two, three, 4. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My 5 is that's bad. So once I make this table, what each one could mean, or what each result, I'm going to put down what they can mean. So I'm going to roll these on the table or on my map later, but let's say that 1 could mean there is a castle. Okay, so if I roll my d6 on the table or on my map and it's a 1, then there's going to be a castle there. If it's a 2, there's going to be a dragon. Okay, now those are kind of special, so might not want to do too much more like that. So maybe a village, something kind of simple. Could do a forest. Maybe a desert. And let's see, we already have lakes on there. Got a castle, a dragon. Any ideas from our viewers? What could be our 6th? Let's do mountains. We don't have any mountains yet. You always need to have some mountains. It's a great place to go on a quest. Forgive me if any of my letters are backwards. I'm noticing them now. It is a little harder to write upside down than I anticipated. Mountains? Okay. Jacob and I are on the exact same page. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm going to take my map, I'm going to put it back where y'all can see it. And so again, the same way as when I casted things, I don't want to try to place them anywhere, so I'm just going to roll. Okay, we got a 3. 3 was a village. Okay, so now we know that there's a tiny little village out here. So I'm going to put a V for village right there. Okay, so that's one of those rolled. Let's roll again. I got a 6 right here. Oh, that's mountains, as suggested by Jacob. Alright, so we'll put some mountains right here. I like to do my mountains just as overlapping triangles. But you can do them however you would like. Alright, we got 3 more, and if we decide we want some more stuff... Okay, 4. Oh, what was 4? I don't remember. Was it... 4 was a forest. Oh, that's cool. A forest right in the middle of those lakes. I bet that, like, cabin property there goes for great amount of gold, right? Gold is our way that we get... our way we measure money in role-playing games, fantasy games a lot. So we'll draw a little forest here. I do my forests as kind of like clouds. Just little poofy clouds. But they're on land, so they're a forest. I put some little poofs in here to show that that's the kind of like the trees popping out. And then if you really want to go to like an extra light layer of detail, you can make these little lines coming out from the bottom. And those little lines can represent your tree trunks. You'll be able to see them better once I move my hand. Those little lines can represent your tree trunks. Like that. Okay, 2 more. 5. That was a desert. Interesting. So there's a forest right in the middle of this one, and then there's a desert right in the middle of this one. I love it. So for deserts, I'm going to do some pointillism. I'm going to just do a lot of little dots in this area to create the texture of the desert. If you have ideas for names for these lakes, or for the deserts, or for the forests, or for the mountains even, let me know in the comments. Jacob, I hope you're making a map at home. I'd love to see yours. You can comment it in the pictures, and we'll keep working on it. Okay, we got 2 more. Oh, I rolled that one way off. 5. 5 is desert, right? 5 was desert again. Interesting. So the desert is getting bigger now. We did have just one desert, but now with this desert being right here, I feel like it might be connected. So now we know that the desert spans all the way down. All right, 2 more. 3. That's forest. That's funny that it rolls right next to the forest, so we'll add some more forest. Same thing as I did before, I add the little poofs to create that element of the trees popping out. And then my lines for the trees here, for the trunks. All right, 1 more. And 5. 5 was desert. I think we're going to re-roll that one. Sometimes you do have to make the call, and you have to say, no, that doesn't make sense. 6. We'll end with some mountains up here. So that makes me think that this is probably a small mountain range. Because there's some mountains down here, mountains down there. There's desert spanning that. So there's probably a little bit of a connection. All right, that looks pretty good. We're going to roll 2 more just to add a little bit of depth to it. And it really wants to be deserts. Looked like it was a little closer to there. We did get a castle after re-rolling a desert. So I'll draw a castle here for us. And then some more desert. So we'll add that there. So this is interestingly turning into kind of a desert land. Not generally a setting that I do in my fantasy, but one that's very interesting. It offers a totally different story, texture, challenges that come with it. All right, so I think that's where we're going to leave our map for now. I think we're going to add some more as we go on. We've got our little village here, so I'll draw a little hut now to go along with that V. A couple little huts. And we'll add to this as we go throughout the week, and as we continue, we're going to add some population. We're going to decide what people live where. We're going to decide where is the conflict. Is there a conflict on this setting? Please feel free and remember to comment what you want the name for this continent to be, what you want it to be called. It could be a kingdom. It could be something else entirely. That's totally up to you all. I will leave that to you. This must be named by comments. I'm gonna make that a must. All right, so I'm gonna tilt the screen back up. You're gonna see, whoa, me again. I'm gonna get my lovely fireplace going again. I'm a little cold. I'm gonna take my map station. I'm gonna set it aside for now, though we will revisit it in the coming days. I know you all missed the fireplace, so I want to get it back for you as well. I hope you enjoyed making a map. Remember that you can go even further than than I did. You can add some colors to it. You can start adding in your people now if you have ideas. The same way that I made the table for the environments and some of those other things that we put on there, you can do that for people. Are there elves? Are there dwarves? Are there humans living in your place? We'll see. You get to figure that out. You get to add that. We'll do it together, but you can also do it on your own if you are enjoying it a lot. We're going to spend the last little bit of our time here together with some more story time, reading our ripped up Chronicles of Narnia, but Chronicles of Narnia nonetheless. Last time when we read, we met some children who were moving out to the country to avoid the war. Right now, this is taking place during World War II. There are air raids in London, and they move out to the country to be away from the conflict. And as they're exploring this very large house with this strange professor that lives there, one of them, Lucy, found a wardrobe, and she decided to enter this wardrobe. And when she did, it was strange. She was walking, and then she felt like she went further than she should have, and then she felt, well, we'll just hop right back into it. I think you'll enjoy where we'll get today. This is a very fun story, and we will begin. "This is very strange," she said, and went on a step or two further. Next moment she found that what was rubbing against her face and hands was no longer soft fur, but something hard and rough and even prickly. "Why, it is just like branches of trees!" exclaimed Lucy. And then she saw that there was a light ahead of her, not a few inches away where the back of the wardrobe ought to have been, but a long way off. Something cold and soft was falling on her. A moment later she found that she was standing in the middle of a wood, at night time, with snow under her feet, and snowflakes falling through the air. Lucy felt a little frightened, but she felt very inquisitive and excited as well. She looked back over her shoulder, and there, between the dark tree trunks, she could still see the open doorway of the wardrobe, and even catch a glimpse of the empty room from which she had set out. She had, of course, left the door open, for she knew that it was a very silly thing to shut oneself into a wardrobe. It seemed to still be daylight there. "I can always get back if anything goes wrong," thought Lucy. She began to walk forward, crunch, crunch, over the snow, and through the wood towards the other light. In about 10 minutes she reached it and found it was a lamppost. As she stood looking at it, wondering why there was a lamppost in the middle of a wood, and wondering what to do next, she heard a pitter-patter of feet coming towards her. And soon after that, a very strange person stepped out from among the trees into the light of the lamppost. He was only a little taller than Lucy herself, and he carried over his head an umbrella, white with snow. From the waist upwards he was like a man, but his legs were shaped like a goat's. The hair on them was glossy black, and instead of feet he had goat hoofs. He also had a tail, but Lucy did not notice this at first because it was neatly caught up over the arm that held the woolen muffler around his neck, or that held the umbrella so as to keep it from trailing in the snow. He had a red woolen muffler around his neck, and his skin was rather reddish too. He had a strange but pleasant little face, with a short pointed beard and curly hair, and out of the hair there stuck 2 horns, one on each side of his forehead. One of his hands, as I have said, held the umbrella. In the other arm he carried several brown paper parcels. What with the parcels and the snow, it looked just as if he had been doing his Christmas shopping. He was a fawn. And when he saw Lucy, he gave such a start of surprise that he dropped all his parcels. "Goodness gracious me!" exclaimed the fawn. Chapter 2. What Lucy Found There. "Good evening," said Lucy, but the fawn was so busy picking up its parcels that at first it did not reply. When it had finished, it made her a little bow. Good evening," said the fawn. "Excuse me, I don't want to be inquisitive, but should I be right in thinking that you are a daughter of Eve?" "My name's Lucy," said she, not quite understanding him. "But you are, forgive me, you are what they call a girl?" said the fawn. Of course I'm a girl, said Lucy. You are in fact human. Of course I'm human, said Lucy, still a little puzzled. To be sure, said the fawn. How stupid of me! But I've never seen a son of Adam or a daughter of Eve before. I am delighted. That is to say, and then it stopped as if it had been going to say something it had not intended but had remembered in time. Delighted, it went on. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Tumnus. I am very pleased to meet you, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy. And may I ask, O Lucy, daughter of Eve, said Mr. Tumnus, how you have come into Narnia? Narnia? What's that? This is the land of Narnia, said the fawn, where we are now, all that lies between the lamp-post and the great castle of Cair Paravel on the eastern sea. And you have come from the wild woods of the west? I got in through the wardrobe in the spare room, said Lucy. Ah, said Mr. Tumnus, in a rather melancholy voice, if only I had worked harder at geography when I was a little fawn, I should no doubt know all about those strange countries. It is too late now. But they aren't countries at all, said Lucy, almost laughing. It's only just back there, at least. I'm not sure. It is summer there. Thank you. Thank you, Malcolm. You can put those back. Thank you. I'll come read to you in just a minute, okay? I'm going to finish reading to my friends here, though. Can you take that to Mommy? Take that to Mommy? Thank you. I'll see you soon. Sorry, he heard me reading. He got excited. I'll step back a couple sentences. But they aren't countries at all, said Lucy, almost laughing. It's only just back there. At least, I'm not sure. It is summer there. Meanwhile, said Mr. Tumnus, it is winter in Narnia, and has been for ever so long, and we shall both catch cold if we stand here talking in the snow. Daughter of Eve from the far land of Spare where eternal summer reigns around the bright city of Wardrobe, how would it be if you came and had tea with me? Thank you very much, Mr. Tumnus, said Lucy, but I was wondering whether I ought to be getting back. It is only just around the corner, said the fawn, and there will be a roaring fire, and toast, and sardines, and cake. Well, it's very kind of you, said Lucy, but I shan't be able to stay long. If you will take my arm, daughter of Eve, said Mr. Tumnus, I shall be able to hold the umbrella over both of us. That's the way. Now off we go. And so Lucy found herself walking through the wood, arm in arm, with this strange creature, as if they had known one another all their lives. They had not gone far before they came to a place where the ground became rough, and where there were rocks all about, and little hills up and little hills down. At the bottom of one small valley, Mr. Tumnus turned suddenly aside, as if he were going to walk straight into an unusually large rock. But at the last moment, Lucy found he was leading her into the entrance of a cave. As soon as they were inside, she found herself blinking in the light of a wood fire. Then Mr. Tumnus stooped and took a flaming piece of wood out of the fire with a neat little pair of tongs, and lit a lamp. Now we shan't be long, he said, and immediately put a kettle on. Okay, I think that is a good place to end for now. There's some really interesting stuff coming up. Oh man, I wish we had time to read the whole scene today. Oh, Jacob, I'm glad that you finished the map. Once I close the video, you can share it. Now, I hope Mr. Justin is still in here because I do owe an answer from yesterday. Mr. Justin was the one who guessed all of my... There's Malcolm. Can you say hi, Malcolm? Say hi, Malcolm. So Mr. Justin guessed all of the characters that were listed, so I told him that I would answer any question whatsoever that he wanted. That question from him was, when did I know that that Miss Kaylee was the one? Miss Kaylee is my wife and the mother of Malcolm, who is in here with me. And so I said it was a kind of funny and nerdy story that I wanted to share with you. So it happened way back in high school. I went to a LARP, which is a live-action role play. And as I arrived in my medieval outfit with my foam swords ready to do some combat, I saw one of my friends having an open house, a celebration for graduating nearby. And I was like, oh man, I need to go visit before I go play Pretend Fantasy, because that would be really rude if I was just playing Fantasy Swords. And as I was over there talking to her, she was like, "Man, I've always wanted to see someone, or I've always wanted to do that LARP thing." And I was like, "Well, I've done that before." And that maybe might. And I went over and I LARPed. I did some swordplay. It was a lot of fun, and I think I impressed her. I don't know. We ended up dating sometime after that, and long time later, now we are married and we have a kid together. So I think I knew then that she was the kind of person who was going to deal with my nerdiness and my craziness, and that I think is like a requirement to be the one for me, Mr. Justin. So there's your sappy answer. I knew that my person accepted me for who I was, nerdiness and all, and I think that's a really important thing for all of us to find, not just like our friends as well. So Malcolm, let's say bye to everyone. Since you are in here, you want to hop up here with me? All right. Malcolm is here to sign off with me, everyone. Thank you for being here this hour. Thank you for making the map. Jacob, I really want to see yours once you share it. Or once I close off, please share it. You can comment and add it in. We will be adding more to our map throughout the week. We will be creating some more crafts, and we will look more at our characters if you are interested. So please comment what character class you want to do and all of that. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow, and I think we will have a great time. I hope you're all doing well. Malcolm, can you say bye-bye?
Say bye-bye.
All right. You all have an excellent day, and we will see you soon. Bye.